Hey guys, Wacky Player here. No cam today because my hair's a mess and I wanted to record a video. So today I wanted to talk about bounty hunter teams because that's I kind of started my account primarily focused on just the bounty hunter faction because I really just love the Star Wars bounty hunters. I think there's a lot of character to them and I really like how they actually play in the game with the whole contract mechanic. It's very unique. It's really cool. It's kind of like a soft it's a soft boost to all of them. It's like a soft ultimate almost. And it's really really cool and they're very accessible early game and that's what kind of caught me. So like I was going for like Bam as like my first legendary, which like no one says like the thing to do, but I did it anyway. Um and I kind of wanted to get like all of them relic at one point. Now I have all of them relic 5 minimum, which I'm really happy about, and I don't regret at all. I think I've found use out of every single bounty hunter. Um, and honestly, with the releases of more and more teams and reworks to certain characters, not in the bounty hunter faction, they have a lot of these bounty hunters have permanent homes, and they have uses at every stage of the game, which I really do love. So first, I think we should probably talk about how the executor and the bounty hunter faction here. So like since these guys are pilots for one of the best fleets in the game, it's just gonna they're always going to be good, whether or not their kit's good whatsoever. So I just wanted to get out of the way. Like these guys, like when you invest in them, they're amazing. I also think they're probably some of the first bounty hunters you should go for. Uh, and the executor should probably be like the beginning starting point if you're building up your bounty hunter faction from nothing. And so that's what I kind of call phase one. Phase one is essentially when you're building up your executor, you want to build up bounty hunter teams out of the units you're already building. And what you should do is you should probably keep Grief and Mando gear 12. Cad Bane probably take to gear 12, and then once you finish executor requirements and then Relic Bam, you could probably go for Cad Bane. Um, and this is probably the best set of the probably two teams you can make. And in 3v3 you can find like use of Boba Fett lead with like Han Solo and Chewie. You could put Boba Fett, Cad Bane, and Dengar if you wanted to the thermal detonator combo, or you could put Bosk, Dengar, and Boba Fett on defense in 3v3 and get some good holds because Dengar has a tenacity down mechanic, I think, on this. And tenacity down, if you don't know, always hits. So if you get one critical hit, you're applying tenacity down on the enemy. So this is really good for countering Wampa because people will bring Wampa against bounty hunters in 3v3 if you don't bring in Dengar because it's a pretty easy battle. But if you bring in Dengar, tenacity down stops that, so you could actually get stun off on a stun and ability block from Bosk and Boba Fett. Bosk's lead is also really, really good because it gives a bunch of protection, tenacity, and 100% defense when you have full health. So they have to eat through all of that protection. And then whenever an enemy suffers a debuff or resists, bounty hunters recover 5% health and protection. So that's just absolutely incredible. On top of that, Bosk has all these defense stats increased. He also gains Health Steal and offense and Health Steal Blaze taunting. And whenever he loses taunt, he gains taunt if the weakest enemy has protection. And you'll notice that he just is regaining protection so much. Uh, and he's gaining health and protection at the start of his turn and half that much whenever a bounty hunter starts their turn with the payout. So essentially, it's like a mini med pack tech. Uh, Beyond that, for 3v3, this is probably going to be the best combination where you can get all of your executor requirements, build up a pretty good BAM team where you have two units that have giant AoEs that can stack Whistling Birds for BAM, able to take out, with probably messy banners, Padme if you have like a high enough relic BAM. So it'll definitely help you out on offense. You can put it on defense, but probably not advisable. On top of that, I don't know if Queel's I have spoken ability. This this is not a Zeta. This is so it's so good, but yeah, so for droids, oh, and light side droids, yeah. So it doesn't proc for IG-88, but since he's a scoundrel, it still procs there. And since a lot of the bounty hunters, I think all of them except Jabba are scoundrels, you can find that they have homes in any scoundrel team really, which is makes them very versatile, especially like if you have a Dash Rendar and you just want to throw in a few units that you have lying around. The next phase is when you're finishing your executor, you're probably working towards your Jabba farm, but you don't have Jabba yet. So you're obviously not going to have a lot of these guys at the relic levels that I have them at, but you might have them starting out gear 12 or something. Like you might have a gear 12 Zam with Omicron. But essentially, because you need Aura Sing for Jabba, that should probably be your first priority. And you should probably, like, when you're working on Jabba, maybe finish rounding out this team. Like get them all to like Relic 5, Grief and Mandalorian and Zam. If not Relic 7 for Zam. Because it's going to help these two survive a lot more, and it's going to you're probably going to get way better manners on a lot of the battles you take bounty hunters into. And Aura Singh essentially replaces Bosk. Not always, but because her leadership is just use an ability buff 10 times, and everyone starts out stealthed except Bosk because he's a tank. You essentially just have to call in 2 assists, and you wind up getting the contract fulfilled because basic attacks count as attacks, so or using abilities. So you essentially just need Bosk to go first. That's why Bosk is. It's important to make him the fastest, and then you have Grief go second. Um, and then you have him use this ability to mass assist. Then Bosk has frenzy, so he gets a bonus turn and he can use hunting party. And then you have contract fulfilled, and hopefully Mandalorian should go next, and then boom, you have instant kill. And if you get Zam fast enough, you can end up sharing a bunch of her speed and get your bounty hunters to like 400, like crazy speed, like pushing GL levels of speed. So you can find use with this team in a lot of different matchups. Even if you're just gonna try to two-shot stuff, you might find like it's useful to just take out a Malik in like a in a Darth Revan lineup if you can't take out the whole team. Or like if you're versing like a galactic legend, maybe you'll find if you just take out one tank, like if you're facing a C on defense, in like low bracket GAC, you might find that from time to time. And you might find you just need to take out a Malik, and then after that you could probably bring in another team and just do a lot better. And so that's why using this lineup is a kind of an upgrade to Bosk, where Bosk is really useful early game because you don't need to invest as much into these units when you might want to go for other things after Executor. And also Bosk is really good at keeping your units alive, which is just amazing for like conquest, amazing for territory battles. It's amazing for putting on defense if you need a defensive team. So it almost adds more flexibility, but it creates a harder contract to get. And then the next thing you're probably gonna want to build up is it's tough to say. Maybe you probably want to build up Fennec Shand next, because what you can do with Fennec is you can take her, bring her with Bosk. You put Fennec in the lead because her again. This is against Lord Vader. It's a common Lord Vader counter. You have to just dispel debuffs, and with Grief's Zeta, sweeten the deal. You dispel all debuffs on bounty hunter allies. So what you can do is bring Fennec in the lead slot, Bosk, Grief, Mandalorian, and then you could bring Beskar Mando for the damage immunity if you really need it. Andy also gives tenacity up, and whenever Fennec Shan gains tenacity up, she gains 10% offense, and if the man at Bam is there, it's 20%. So She's getting a lot of stacking offense if you bring in Beskar Mando. And that counter is really good against Lord Vader because you can basically just instant kill Royal Guard or any marked tank, or Maul, with Mandalorian. And then since they don't have any protection, Fennec Shan is going to attack twice. Um, with she's going to attack twice. Uh, Not attack twice. She's going to deal 50% more damage with targets against no protection. And then with when she has Seasoned Veteran, which she gets from her contract, she ignores taunt effects, which I'm pretty sure includes marked. Yeah. So that's a common Lord Vader counter, and that's probably why you want to build up Fennec next, because you can create a GL counter that you might see on defense from time to time. And when you don't need to put her there, you can use her with Beskar Mando because of the offense stacking mechanic. And then she also has an AoE where you should probably get this Zeta, it's worth it. Where basically you're hitting targets, you're hitting every target, and then you attack the weakest target again, and you're applying armor shred. And then you give overconfident to your dark side allies, so it would really just be IG-88, and you get a little bit of turn meter when that runs out. And then also your AoE attacks like 5 times, and so you're stacking Whistling Birds like pretty fast. That's why the AoE is important with BAM. You just need units that are able to stack his Whistling Birds. Making sure that you don't need to use the Wonder of the Force. If saying meaning if you don't need to use Wonder of the Force, you're making sure you can stack those Whistling Birds. The next team down here is a Hutt Cartel team. Basically, before you get Jabba, you're going to be working on your Hutt Cartel units. And you already have Cad Bane Relic because he's an executor pilot. At least you should, right? You should have these two Relic after you finish the executor. You should go to Relic them. And this is a really good use of your Hutt Cartel units. And you might be wondering, like, why don't you use Bausch lead? And it can be useful in certain situations. I find against a lot of teams with fear, it might be more useful because you're basically tankier, and you're what's the payout? Immune to stun. And I find that being tankier kind of just helps with like when you're missing a bunch of turns. And she also ignores fear. But basically this team, the reason this isn't as good of a lead is because when you look at what Boba Fett has with thermal detonators, and his lead, it's way better, and it's way better up front. Like Boba Fett's lead is very underrated because he's just an older kid. I think a lot of people underestimate it, and a lot of people have other things to focus on. But his lead is really good because you're getting all of these things immediately, and the contract is just giving you some tenacity, and you're really just doing it for the payouts. And all you have to do for the contract is defeat the first enemy that takes a turn, which depending against the team can be awful because it might be a GL that you don't want to target first. But you should never bring this team against a GL, obviously. But it might be a target you don't want to target, or they might be under stealth. And that's why it's important to know when to bring this in. It's a solid, like, this team's probably a solid B tier team before you get Jabba. And then once you replace Boba Fett for Jabba, and you put in like Embo and Lando, it's amazing. Skifgar, that is. But what's really nice about this team is that you gain 15% turn meter whenever a thermal detonator explodes. You're gaining 50% health equal to total potency of all bounty hunters. And when Bausch has insane potency, like I think the highest potency in the game, like without mods, she would have like 140% potency. You're getting a bunch of max health. And then does he have any max health? I'm pretty sure. He has 50% more protection. He revives at 60% health. Yeah, so like it's really nice to have Chrysanthemum built for a ton of protection, really. But health is definitely not wasted on him. And Yeah, so you're making all your units tankier. You're getting increased crit chance and crit damage to all of your units, which is really nice for Greedo, Cad Bane, Boba Fett. You're getting thermal detonator synergy with Bausch and Greedo. And it's a good use of a lot of your requirements as you're building your roster towards Jabba. The last the last one is basically if you're like a freak like me, or maybe you have JMK already, you have Jango Fett. Essentially, you should just what's really important with this lineup is just having Jango Fett, and you throw in Dengar because he's just a leftover bounty hunter you have, and Nuke Gunray. Nuke Gunray is very useful with Django because you always can find use with in 3v3 putting Newt lead with Django and another separatist. You'll always find that because you'll instantly get Django's contract, which gives him a bunch of. I don't think it gives him defense penetration. He gains damage immunity for 2 turns, which can't be dispelled in offense. And if you build offense on him, and then you have Poggle, because Poggle's ability unique gives where is he? Let me show you. It gives offense to your separatist allies. That's not Poggle. That's not Poggle. That's Poggle. Separatist allies without hive mind have 25% increased offense. And getting a 20 additional 25% offense for each defeated ally. So just having him, those three, you can have the Gear 12 new Gunray is really good. And then I put in Mob Enforcer just because it's just a scoundrel you just need to build up. You could throw in whatever you really want. Because this is just a leftover team, and you really just if you really have these guys, Django, you really should just be focused on having Newt at like Gear 12. Just so you can have Newt lead with Django in the secondary slot in 3v3. Good Morning Guard's actually pretty nice with Django because enemies have minus 20% tenacity while he's active. You can kind of ignore everything else about this, and then when you look at Django's lead, enemies are already minus 40% tenacity. So I don't know if that's additive or multiplicative. I'm assuming it's additive, and if it is, then it would be minus 60% tenacity, which is pretty nice. For just applying debuffs, especially because you're probably going to get Django to go first. But this team is nice because you can kind of pair a bunch of random stuff with it. Like you could put just a bunch of different scoundrels in here and find some uses for it. Like you could just trade out this slot for almost anything. You could throw in Hondo, you could throw in Cara Dune, you could throw in L337. Like because you're just giving scoundrel allies 30 speed, and it's just a way to put your Dengar with another bounty hunter. And also, like I said before, like you don't need to do that. You could just put, like a separatist with, you could probably just do a weird separatist lineup, if you have a bunch of separatist units lying around, and then put like, instead of uh, Dengar, you put Dengar with Mad Bam, and you put IG-88 down here, and then you have a then you have IGDA with Separatist because like they have dark side droid synergy. Also, you could also use IG-88 lead with like because it's whenever anyone scores a critical hit, they they have a inflicted damage over time. So you could put in any unit that has like damage over time effect. Like if like you could put I don't know you could put Dengar would be really good because he attacks like multiple different times with his AoE. You can put in Zalbar Mission, and just you can throw in a bunch of like leftover stuff. Even throw in Darth Vader and just have a team that just has a bunch of damage over times. And you could throw in a Wat Tambor, and then you could revive IGA if you want. So there's a lot of different options you have for your leftover bounty hunters, and honestly, it's really only if you have Django or are trying to get use out of like IG-88 and some other units you have lying around that you don't find much value out of anymore. Definitely not a top tier team down here you would slot in, but with your other three teams, it's pretty good use of your bounty hunters. To just have an extra team, maybe clean up or defeat a weaker team, or whatnot, or maybe Gear 12 team like of Geos or something. All right, phase three is where you start to get. This is when you have accounts bigger. You have Jabba. You're creating your Jabba lineup. You don't need all these Omicrons like I do. You probably don't need any Omicron on them. Probably just Chrysanthemum if you were gonna get any. If you're interested in Territory War, maybe Embo. You don't need any of them really. And Jabba team. Enough said. Everyone realized Embo was just amazing because Embo's ability does damage based off max protection. Protection up, I'm pretty sure counts for that. I'm not completely sure, but basically Jabba's always helping increase mastery, which is going to increase health, and I don't know if it increases protection for him, but it's going to increase damage, it's going to increase health, which increases protection up, and he's also calling all the attackers to assist. And Embo's basic dispels all buffs on the target. And then when Embo gets payout, whenever he scores a critical hit, he takes a bonus turn. So if Jabba's calling all attackers to assist, whenever giving everyone that buff on one of his specials, and then call someone to assist on his basic. If it's Embo takes a bonus turn. If another ally with that buff that I forget what it's called, uses an ability and all the attackers are called to assist, he takes a bonus turn. So it's a great way to get extra damage in, and just fantastic. Really a lot of synergy with Jabba. You can put Boba Fett here, but it's really worth going for Embo. Next up, your Orsing Bosk bounty hunters with Zam. Then after that, I'm assuming your account's close to 4 mil. And maybe if you're interested in bounty hunters, this is probably like the next thing you should think about is Scion of Django, which is kind of controversial because a lot of people kind of shit on Scion of Django, but I find that I found a lot of use out of him, where not just in territory wars, but I found use taking out a lot of pretty decent teams. With messy banners, and there's probably better teams that are out there, but I find that with my roster, Scion of Django was probably the best next step, best upgrade for the units I already had, like Queel, IG-11, Fennec, and Bam. And it kind of gives this team can kind of give a home for a lot of these units, where before there was kind of a lot of different places I could put them. And now since Bam I have with Bo-Katan, that would be the next final step. I put in Wat Tambor here, and I find that I can take out a lot of pretty decent teams. I find whenever there's a weak C on defense, which I still see from time to time, and I'm kind of scared to bring in Wampa because maybe there's a Count Dooku or someone that can mess me up. I'll bring in a Scion of Django with a Wat Tambor speed tech on Scion and be able to just beat them. And then in Grand Arena or Territory Wars, you have a very good Territory War team that can beat. Pretty sure they can beat Jabba. They can beat most Galactic Legends, except I'm pretty sure Lord Vader you can't, because they're immune to damage over time effects, I think, or it's something like that. And Jedi Master Kenobi, I think, but I find that the other battles aren't that bad. Even Leia, I recently showed with the Bam Datacron, I one shot a Leia, but even without that, you probably can kill a few units that are high value with Scion of Django. Moving on, I think this team is a pretty good use of a lot of your leftover Hutt Cartel units that you had to build up, because essentially with Moff Gideon, when he goes, you want him to go first. Use this to give everyone a bonus turn meter, and then tanks taunt. Attackers gain offense up, and protection up doesn't really matter because it goes on Cad Bane. It's whatever. But the thing is that for each debuffed enemy, bounty hunter allies gain 15 speed. So what that ends up being is I think 75 bonus speed. So you basically get Gideon to go first and be fast, which isn't that hard. He gives everyone a bonus turn meter, takes bonus turn meter away from the enemy. Yes, you're not going to get contract, be able to do contract because the enemy hasn't taken a turn yet, but you have so much offense up damage, you can almost try to kill the first enemy that would take a turn. And it's a good use of, and Gamorrean Guard's already taunting, and it's a good use of a lot of leftover units. And if you're not using Gideon, if you don't have Dark Trooper Moff Gideon, you could probably slot in like another Imperial Trooper in like your Veers lineup, and get just more value out of your roster. And then the last one is basically just throwing Django lead with a bunch of leftover scoundrels. So like, I have my leftover bounty hunters. You could throw you could throw IG-88 with I like this. This is kind of a fun team to do. IG-88, then you go Zalbar. Let's say you got like you have a Gear 12 Zalbar because you got Darth Revan, right? Like that's a pretty realistic scenario. You do Dengar, and then you have, and then it's no, not him. You throw in Wat Tambor. What you could do is give tank tech to Zalbar. You could give speed tech to like, I don't know, someone else. Or I think mission would probably be the best for speed tech because every time one of them takes a turn, if you have the Zetas, they both recover health and protection for how much damage over times on our enemies. Then you give med tech to like Dengar or IG-8 or something. And then Wat Tambor also revives Dark Side Droid, so there's some synergy with IG-88. But like it's a fun little damage over time team that I find use in Conquest to get damage over time feats done. And I have found use in Grand Arena from time to time. But it's not like it's just kind of a fun team that doesn't have too much like viability at like, versus really good teams, but like, it's just a weird combination you can put together. Besides that, you could just throw like Django for just a decent scoundrel lead, or you can throw in like Nuke Gunray with some separatists if you have left over with Django. Maybe you don't have like geos built up that well like me. You can like throw in a Poggle. You can like, and then throw in like him and then throw a Watt or something, like there's a bunch of different stuff you can do with your remaining scoundrels. You can throw them in with like a Dash Rendar, even though they're not light side and they're not getting those buffs. You can throw them in there if need be. And so that final team is kind of just a leftover slot because maybe like you just need to have a cleanup team, or you just need to have just fill in another slot in your defense, and maybe you want people to underestimate it. Like this one, like I think is like pretty interesting because you could, let's say like you don't have like you don't want to throw in Mission, you could throw in Vader. If you don't have Zalbar, you could throw in like what's another damage? You could throw in you could bring Gamorrean Guard instead and put Mob Enforcer where Gamorrean Guard would be. But basically any damage over time unit, or like maybe like Enfy's Nest, and just maybe get like one hold from time to time, just people underestimating it. And so that's kind of phase 3 when your count's a little bit bigger. You have Jabba, you're able to access proven grounds. You might have unlocked Scion of Django, and you might be considering building him up. And then phase 4, what I call final, is essentially every team where bounty hunters would be placed at their final, basically their home, their final home is. So the first two teams looking exactly the same because they're just that amazing. Then you have Django's going with Maul. There is no other team Django should go with. Django is best with Maul. Trench is so much weaker than Maul with Imperial Super Commando. Imperial Super Commando requires all Darkside Mandalorians, and whenever they attack out of turn, they deal additional true damage, recover protection. And whenever Imperial Super Commando attacks out of turn, Gar Saxon attacks out of turn. This rework for an ability that's not even a Zeta has made this faction able to kill Galactic Legends, and it's on my to-do list, my farm plan, because it's that amazing of a team. I get value out of this team even at these gear levels. At gear 12 with these two, gear 11, 2 stars Canderous, and Relic 2 Maul. I get so much value out of this team, able to beat, Maul lineups that don't use Imperial Super Commando. Like, Imperial Super Commando is highly slept on, and Gar Saxon. They have an amazing ship. They require no Zetas to really work. Unless you want to get this lead, which you don't even need, because you can also, if you don't even have Maul, you can also if you can also just bring in them with an Empire lineup and do great. And I plan to build them on my free to play account as well. The next place, and Dr. Afro, which I also find is a really good efficient use to put Vader somewhere, because the best lineup people do is like B2 Super Battle Droid here. But what I think is, like, if you go for the Executor, it might be worth going for Vader, because you can just, and if you go for Jabba, you got Jedi Knight Luke, so Sana Staros really works with a lot of Jedi Knight Luke requirements. And Dr. Afro actually has some synergy with Vader, where Darth Vader, Chrysanthemum also have 20% max health. Like, there's a little bit of synergy that you have with Vader here. Dark side, Vader, Chrysanthemum also gain defense, offense, and tenacity equal to 30% of Dr. Afro's potency. So you can get Vader to do a lot of damage. Might not be as good as B2, but it's a nice kind of plug and play. You can kind of put Vader here and have some synergy, a boost to Vader. And you can have IG-88. So you really only need to relic the 4 requirement units, and then relic Afro, and then you can have a fully completed team, So that's where IG-8 is going to live. And then you can also have Vader, which is an executive requirement, which is nice. Scion of Django, basically, if you are working towards Bo-Katan, you're going to probably put Mandalore Bam with Bo-Katan. So take out Dengar, or take out Bam here and put in Dengar. Dengar is pretty good with Scion of Django lead, because whenever an ally gets tenacity, while they have tenacity up, they have 50% critical avoidance. And whenever Dengar's critically hit, he gains stealth. And whenever he's debuffed, he gains tenacity up for 2 turns. And he gains turn meter whenever he suffers a negative effect. So there's a lot of synergy with tenacity up, getting some critical avoidance, making him tankier, and then also able to stealth. Yeah, not stealth, but yeah, there's a little bit of synergy there. I think, yeah, there's also, what is it? It's also like, with the contract, while buffed, you have to damage a debuffed enemy 20 times. So gaining tenacity up helps, or stealth helps to proc that contract. On top of, like, you attack all enemies, so you're debuffing all of them. If you crit them with tenacity down, you're making it easier to proc other other debuffs. And then also you attack again with Dengar's special. You attack again like 2 more times, so you're dealing damage, 7 instances of damage, so it really helps get contract a lot faster. In territory where the contract's half, so you basically can get contract, you get like 70% of the contract done with Dengar if they were already debuffed. And then next up is like your leftover Hutt Cartel units. And the reason I don't have Moff Gideon here is, like, I'm assuming you're probably working towards Dark Trooper Moff Gideon. You might have Dark Trooper Moff Gideon. Like, again, this is like a final like the final place your bounty hunters will live. And this is a kind of use of Boba Fett, and this is all in 5v5, that is. And you basically take out Moff Gideon, and I just put in Mob Enforcer because it's a leftover Hutt Cartel unit. You could throw in a lot of different units. You could throw in any unit that has defense up, because if Gamorrean Guard gets defense up with the Zeta, I'm pretty sure, or before that. No, it's before that. Then while he has defense up, if Uh, what is it? Oh, I don't know if this might require Jabba. I might be getting this wrong, but um, yeah, no, disregard that. I'm pretty sure that's incorrect. With the defense up and gaining taunt, but you could throw a lot of different units in here to just debuff the enemy. I mean, like if you just have leftover because the you're gaining 50% crit damage and crit chance for any unit, so you could throw in a lot of different stuff really. But I just threw in leftover Hutt Cartel because Gamorrean Guard is getting increased health, max health for each other Hutt Cartel ally. So you're getting like 40% instead of 30%. Uh, Mob Enforcer gains max health for each Scoundrel ally, max protection for each Bounty Hunter, and speed for each Hutt Cartel. So you're getting like 40 speed, if not counting yourself. And you're able to have another thermal detonator, which has some synergy with Boba Fett. So it's like a little bit of bonuses and a way. It's basically an efficient way to use your roster, kind of maximizing it. And also like Boba Fett is such a good unit with just execute that you really just need an enemy to gain a lot of buffs or debuffs that you can just dispel, and then he could just one shot them. So you don't need too much. You just need a way for him to survive essentially, and hopefully with this team, Gamorrean Guard can get a turn in a taunt. If not, you might need to put in like Watt here to just put protection recovery thing, tank tech, or give speed to Boba Fett or whatnot. Um, but yeah, that's kind of all of the 5v5 stuff. And I'll go quickly over some like 3v3 stuff that's kind of useful. Let me not put uh unique only. So Jabba essentially, I think people have figured it out that the main thing you should do is just these three always. There's kind of not a use of anyone else. Really isn't a need. Uh, and then when it comes to Boba Fett, you can put Boba Fett with so much different stuff. You can put Boba Fett with Han Solo, Chewie on defense or offense. You could put Boba Fett with you know Scion of Django, these two. You could put them with just leftover Hutt Cartel units. You can put them with so much different things. Um, I find that IG-88 surprisingly works really well with these two. Um, and basically the reasoning is that you're getting so much damage over times because IG-11 um dispels all debuffs on themselves with the Zeta, and then for each debuff dispelled, they inflict damage over time on a random enemy. So you find that you just wind up melting enemies, and then Queel Zeta makes it so you're sharing stats, and it's a really interesting kind of combination because you're not really focusing proc and contract, but you end up with a team that has a lot of. I don't know if does Queel share potency. Let's see. Da, 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 da. And potency. Yeah, so these are all kind of useful stats to give to IG 88. Um yeah. Other uses of bounty hunters, I think I brought this up before. Bosk. Bosk with Dengar, and then you can throw in a few different bounty hunters. You can throw in Cad Bane. Cad Bane is unique because he has his mastery. He's a support unit. His mastery not only gives critical damage and whatnot, it also gives deflection and dodge chance. So it's pretty nice. Because with his payout, that's not his payout. He gains 25% increased evasion, and whenever he evades, he inflicts a thermal detonator. So it's a pretty tanky unit, and he also has a lot of protection. So you pair that like just for a unit, like a random unit, you pair the protection with Bosk, and you're gaining, like right now he would have 90k protection, which is pretty good. And also when you have increased defense, while bounty hunters have protection, it gives a lot. It makes them a lot tankier. And also, with tenacity down, you're going to be able to stun them. Um, and you also, with this ability, you remove max protection. So, and it can't be evaded. So, but then when you have tenacity down, it basically can't be resisted and whatnot. So it's a really nice way to do that. Um, Besides that, I said you put Boba Fett here. It would be, the reason would be either put Boba Fett, Django, or Fennec. And the reason you put Fennec is because you can proc contract really fast with Fennec, because for boss you only need to damage. It doesn't say attack, it says damage. So since it only means damage the weakest enemy 10 times, Fennec's basic counts, it's 5 procs of damage. So that is half the contract fulfilled. On top of that, everyone's dark side. So if you have her Zeta, it basically gives you, when an ally loses overconfident, you gain turn meter, which is really nice for Fennec. It basically, whenever, if you put this on defense, and Fennec uses this, everyone's gonna get increased offense, speed, and evasion. You have minus 20% defense, but with Bosk lead, you get 100% plus defense, so you're still decently tanky. Besides that, the reason you would put Django or Boba Fett is because, and I think Boba Fett would be better because, let me look at this. Boba Fett recovers 100% protection and regains Bounty Hunter's Resolve until he's defeated, and he recovers 100% protection whenever he defeats an enemy. So the importance of that is that you have increased protection with Bosk lead, that you can just regain, right? So you're gonna have like right now I'd probably have 15 plus 4 would be 19. It's almost 20k. I'd have like 57k protection. And then when I get a finishing blow with execute, I would just regain all that protection. And if an enemy doesn't have, what do you call it? If an enemy doesn't have something that stops revives, Boba Fett or Django would revive, and then you have to go through all that protection and defense again, right? I don't actually know if Django Fett revives with 100% protection. He has increased max health though. At the start of encounter when he defeats an enemy. Actually, I don't think. Yeah, you only regain. You revive at 100% health. You don't revive with protection. But what happens is, whenever at the start of the encounter you recover 100% protection and gain Bounty Hunter's Resolve. So I've got caught behind this in 3v3, where if you kill Boba Fett or Django here, but then you don't get them again, then you lose the battle. They're gonna restart with 100% health and 100% protection, and they're gonna have Bounty Hunter's Resolve. So then you have to do it all over again. So you have to bring a team that stops revives, or which it's basically causing people to use really high value teams. Like they might have to use their Mandalorian, they might have to use a Nihilist or something. Probably not a Nihilist, because Trey is just so good that you're bringing that up with better stuff. They might use Wat Tambor to throw in the speed text to stop revives or whatnot. But it's a pretty effective way to use your bounty hunters on defense if you need them. Another good use for bounty hunters is with Nuke Gunray, Jango Fett, and then you could throw in Watt here. You could throw in a random separate tank, just a random tank that doesn't even have any synergy. You could throw in Poggle for some extra offense, and essentially Django's just getting his contract fulfilled immediately. You're getting increased speed and potency for each enemy with extortion. And it's just a really good way to use this team on attack, that you can take out a lot of stuff, maybe clean up, or take out a team that's way faster than you. But since Django has damage immunity, you can actually get a turn in. Besides that, There's also what else can we do? I find that surprisingly, IG-88 plus these two actually has a pretty fast contract because you have to score critical hits against debuffed enemies 10 times, and I'm pretty sure Grief Karga attacks twice. So if you get critical hits on both of them uh against a debuff target, and since whenever you critically hit, you're inflicting a damage over time. So if a team's not super tanky or has tenacity up, you can actually get contract pretty fast if you already have. Let's say you're putting Bosk on defense, right? Um, Another good use would just be bring like Bosk, Grief, Mando, or instead of Grief, bring in Fennec to get easy contract. If you have Bosk for offense, but if you don't, IG-88 it's a good alternative. Or a Sing is also a good alternative. You just have to make sure that the stealth and the wall and the buffs that you have don't I can't easily get dispelled, and that's where IG-88 might be a better lead. Besides that, uh, I find that Zam can be kind of almost left to the side because it's kind of hard to slot in Zam because there's a lot of other units that are good. Like I think you could slot in Zam. If you have Zam, you could slot her in up here on defense, and you have a lot of thermal detonator synergy here and increased stats. So it creates a pretty good defense team that your enemies have to go up against, and if your team's fast enough, they might outrun Imperial troopers, which would be like a pretty decent counter to them. Don't bring Tuscans with don't bring Tuscan don't get Tuscan Omicron. I got it. I don't regret it, but I kind of regret it. Because there's really no need because Tuscan Warrior, Tuscan Chieftain with Tuscan Raider Omicron is just the best 3v3 combination you can get. So with Sign of Django, you're probably just going to want to bring in these two, Fennec, and then Zam, or like another scoundrel that you can just have allow them to survive, or maybe even Watt to give speed tech to Scion. Another thing I wanted to talk about was actually Cad Bane and his lead in 3v. In general, this lead seems like it would be very difficult to get because you have to inflict 20 debuffs on enemies. But if you pair him with like Dengar and like Zam, you can get this done so fast because you have so much potency to proc down debuffs, and Dengar gets these debuffs procking really, really fast. You can also use, Greedo here or something and, be pretty useful. Another thing that I was thinking about was it's like a smaller version of a team I showed earlier, but essentially you're just taking IG-88 with Zalbar and Mission, and you create a team that just has so much damage over time on it because like whenever Mission attacks, he's applying damage over time. Whenever right, I thought that's what it was. And inflicts damage over time on target enemy for 2 turns. Yep. Okay. And then whenever Zalbar attacks, he's applying damage over time, and then they attack together. They kind of call each other to assist almost, and then they're applying so much damage over time on top. And whenever they crit, they apply damage over time. Whenever they fall below hell, Zalbar gains retribution and taunt. So it's like it's a really fun team to just have a bunch of damage over time on it if you can use that to your advantage against certain teams like teams that just might take a lot of turns, but you can just get them a few damage over times on them, and then they can just like burn themselves to death essentially. um and also remember that like these aren't S tier teams. A lot of them aren't. Some of them are, like Jabba and whatnot. um but I'm kind of trying to show you ways to use your bounty hunters if you're sitting on them, and maybe like you're finding you need more teams for GAC on offense, to put on defense or whatever. And I'm trying to show you all the tools in the toolbox that you can use with the bounty hunters, and I'm just in 3v3 especially. And let me just go through the bounty hunters to make sure I showed everything. Um, da, da, da. Dengar is also good with BAM lead if you're trying to stack whistling birds, but a better use would be like putting Dash Rendar with BAM. Besides that, there's really not much else. I mean, the only other thing would be Embo lead, because what it does is it gives 50% counter chance to your bounty hunters. So it's a pretty good way to put slower bounty hunters that might be a little bit tankier, like Cad Bane, with that protection I showed you. And maybe even Dengar. And it just gives counterattack. So it's a good use of some leftover bounty hunters and a good lead that you might want to use from time to time in 3v3. Besides that, that's it for the video. Hopefully it helps, and this is kind of a showcase of what you might, whatever stage of the game you're at with your bounty hunters. I wanted to just kind of help people out, show what teams you can kind of use with them, and kind of maximize your roster. Again, these aren't like S tier teams that are going to be beating gas, or these aren't like Zori Blisses. A lot of these units are a lot older, and they're, some of them are getting antiquated, like Zam's Omicron. I remember when it was the best Omicron in the game, and then Omicron got released. Versio Omicron got released. Treya, Savage, like, so these units are still good, and a lot of people have them in the roster because a lot of them are necessary for a lot of Galactic Legends or whatnot. So wanted to just show what's the best use of all of these units and how to maximize your roster. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Stay in tune for more content and GAC streams that I might start doing on YouTube. All right. Thank you everyone for watching. Peace.